All right, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I'm driving a 2009 BMW M3. Up front is a 4.0 liter V8 and down below is a 7-speed automatic transmission. If you'd like to read more of my thoughts, head on over to carmarshal.com/overdrive. I'll be writing a complete article about the M3. But let's get back to that 4.0 liter V8. Now this is the first ever M3 to have a V8 and so far the only generation to have a V8. It is a 4 liter, and the interesting thing about the V8 is that it really revs. It drives like an inline 6. There's not actually a whole lot of power down low as opposed to what you would normally think of a V8. Normally when you think V8, you think, oh, torque down low, you think Mustang, you think Camaro, you think Challenger. But really, this is sort of a higher strung V8, I almost want to say. It revs, it feels like BMW's 6 cylinders, where they're very, very smooth, very, very linear, and they pull all the way up to the top. This just has 2 more cylinders and sounds a little bit more muscly. So I'm just gonna kind of give it the beans here. That was not even a full pull, and it sounds so good. Now that was a red line pull, and as you probably heard, it pulls so solid all the way up. It doesn't feel like a V8. It makes the right sounds, and it gives you the power of a V8, but it doesn't rev like one. It doesn't feel like it's twisting and contorting up at the top. It just feels like it keeps going and going and going. A common issue with these engines are the rod bearings. They like to go out from time to time. There's actually a whole service thing from BMW about it. And so if you do end up getting one of these cars with the 4 liter V8 or the M5s, definitely let the car warm up 100% before driving it. Treat it basically like a rotary, and that's what I'm doing here in this video, is I'm letting it get fully up to temperature right under 210, about 209 actually, before driving it to help preserve those rod bearings, which is a known issue for the 4 liters. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 7-speed automatic transmission. It is a dual clutch transmission, and so it sort of feels like a manual transmission. It sort of drives like one, it sort of shifts like one, which takes some getting used to for sure, but it's not bad. I like it a lot. It's pretty quick with the shifts. It's actually downshifting for me right now, actually almost a little bit aggressively as I'm coming up to these train tracks. And they can be shifted on the paddle shifters as well. And last but not least, the M3 is of course rear wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me I have 2 gauges. On my left is my speedometer and on the right is my tachometer, as well as there's a little information screen down in the center. I really like M gauges. I've always loved BMW gauges just as a whole. On the steering wheel I do have phone options, track up and down, my CD player button of course like all other BMWs, but then I actually have a little M button. And so we hit this and it lets you have a little bit of fun with the car. This is M mode. This is the performance mode. This is where you can really open up the car. It takes most of the nannies off and gives you that full M experience, and that is done through the steering wheel. To my left, I do have my headlights. I do have automatic headlights, which is nice. And on the door, I actually do get my window switches. This is sort of contrary to older BMWs, which I've been reviewing a lot of, E36s and E46s, you'll find the window switches on the center console. It's not the case with the E92. They are on the door, as well as there is a speaker in the door, which is super nice. In the center, I do get a giant display. Right now, it's showing me navigation, but I can switch to my radio, Bluetooth. All your stuff is going to be run through that center screen. Down below the radio, I do have 2 vents, as well as my central locking and tire pressure monitoring system button. I really like the central locking. I really genuinely think that all cars should have some form of central locking button right there in the center, so people don't have to dig around for it, especially the passenger. Apparently, I breezed over the climate controls in the original driving review. Nothing too crazy here. It is 2009. This is when BMW started finally phasing out their orange electronics. So it does have an orange readout on the climate controls, but nothing too crazy here. You have recirculating, auto, and that's really nice. Then we have a CD player because it's 2009 and people still use CD players. And we have a secret little cubby hole actually down below, which houses a cigarette lighter and an ashtray. Then we come to the shifter. Not the biggest fan of this shifter. I'm not a fan of most modern automatic BMW shifters, and the reason for it is it's a little difficult to understand at first. And actually, when this car is in park, it's very normal, but then you move it over to drive and you're actually in paddle shift mode. Move it over to drive again, and then you're in regular drive. You don't have to touch the paddles at all. So something interesting I learned about the M3 is to put it into park, what you do is you shift it over into neutral, and you have to pull the handbrake, and then once you turn the car off, it acknowledges that it's in park. I can't really complain too much about the shifter. It is also a little bit small, but alas, I'll get over it. Down below the shifter, there's a little, what looks like a music button, just volume or something like that. It actually sort of adjusts how aggressive you want the car to be. So with it turned all the way down, it sort of shifts pretty regularly, actually. It doesn't really shock you. It's gonna get into the highest gear possible. And then we put it up a couple notches. It's gonna downshift. It's gonna hold it up in the higher revs, so you get more power. Basically, this is the aggressive meter of the automatic transmission. Then we have the controls for the center display. I really like them. This is a pretty standard BMW part at this point. It does control the middle screen. We have CD, radio, menu, telephone, navigation, back option, as well as a joystick. I think the joystick has good feedback. That's what I always look for with these sort of little joystick things is, can I keep my eyes on the road and kind of tell what the joystick is doing without looking at the screen or the joystick itself? And it passes that test with flying colors. Then I do have an armrest and a surprising lack of cup holders for the naked eye. But actually, if you come over to the dash over here, there's actually two pop-out cup holders, one for you and one for your passenger. I'm not a big fan of these just because I don't have a whole lot of confidence in them. If I'm gonna be bringing anything more than a cup of water, it might start to be an issue. I just don't trust them all that much. Now the seats are relatively high bolstered. They are sportier seats, although they're not uncomfortable seats, and I really like that. Being a bigger guy, it's hard to find good sports seats, but these are definitely some of them. They do have M embossed on them in the leather. It's not stitched in, it's actually embossed in the leather itself. And I think that that looks really, really good. I think it's classy. I think it's low-key. And I love the fact that this is a black interior. I think that really, really does the trick for me that this is a black interior. I did drive an E92 non-M that had a tan interior, and it was nice, but I think I definitely prefer the black. But speaking of seats, we do have a back seat, so we will do a back seat review. All right, so I'm in the back of the E92 M3. Honestly, the back seats aren't bad. I do have a center console, two little vents, a little openable ashtray, and an openable center console. I got two speakers in the doors. Nothing too crazy back here. I apologize, I had to leave the door open because I physically cannot reach it to reclose it, and I'm alone. I do have sort of a center console that's Velcroed in, I guess. Interesting, I guess. It's a coupe. It's not a four-door. I apologize if the wind is getting me. It's not a four-door. You're not going to have that much room. Headroom, sort of an issue. I just put my head back, and I am hitting the roof. And we don't have a sunroof, but we'll talk about that in our next little part, which is the looks. I love the look of the E92 M3. I love this color. The color is Alpine White. It's a pretty famous BMW color. I like the wheels. I wish the wheels were all black. But that being said, I really don't have any complaints about the wheels. I don't have any complaints about the color. I just really like the look of this car. I like the bubble in the hood. I like how aggressive everything is. I think it's a really good looking car, but I did mention that we don't have a sunroof, and the reason I said that is because this actually has a carbon fiber roof. So if you did not spec a sunroof or you did not get the convertible, you got an actual legitimate carbon fiber roof from BMW. I really like this. I think it definitely adds to the sportiness and exclusivity of M3s. I love how M3s are set apart from the regular 3 Series. And the carbon fiber roof definitely helps distinguish that, as well as the big bubble in the hood. I think it's a little bit comical, but I do like the look of it. Now, I came into this review a little bit skeptical, of course, because this is a V8 M3. All the other M3s have been smaller engines than this. We had the E46 M3 was a 6-cylinder, the E36 M3 was a 6-cylinder, and even the E30 M3 was actually a 4-cylinder. And so I started thinking in my head, did BMW jump the shark with putting a V8 in their car? Did it ruin the M3 feel? Because I've driven the 2 previous generations of M3s, of which I have a review for the E46, and I have to say no. BMW did not jump the shark with putting a V8 in their M3. They absolutely did not. Because I think really the M3 is just showing off the potential in which BMW has. They put their good stuff in the M3. They saved their good stuff for the M3. Yes, there's the M5, and at times there's been an M6 and an M2, but the M3 has always sort of been the poster child for BMW. This is the best BMW can do. And you know what? In the late 2000s, the V8 was the best BMW could do, and I am certainly not mad about it. I love this car. I love the sound of this car. I like the aggression of this car. I love how the V8 makes all the good V8 noises, but doesn't die when you ask it to rev above 6,000 RPM, of which this revs to almost 8,000. I really don't have any major complaints about this car besides the shifter. I don't like it, but what are you gonna do? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned something about the E92 M3. Thank you so much to Chris for inviting me down here to the St. Louis area to drive his M3. Sounds great, it looks great, and this is quite the piece of machinery. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys. Aside from my soul.